Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wolf of Young Street podcast. My guest today is Julia Eden. She's an HR professional, and today we'll be talking everything related to jobs, everything related to people within organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the show, Julia.
Hello. Go on. Shoot. Go on. I've got my white knuckle ride. I'm waiting for this. We're the department everybody loves to hate.
Yeah. Okay. So where I think I'll get started our
Yeah.
conversation today is how do you describe what you do to people?
Okay. In its purest form, HR and people and culture sets up an organization for success. It also sets up its people for success. So what we're doing is we're helping the organization self-actualize at the same time as people, using training and development as a strategic tool within the organization. So that's what we
Right.
do. And, at its simplest level, we get people to play nice. If there's a fight, if there's a conflict, if there's something going on within the organization, we're usually sort of at the center of it, trying to straighten everything out.
Right.
People are multifaceted. We only see the tip of the iceberg when we meet somebody. And, different people get on with different people, and some people just can't see eye to eye. And that's usually when we're pulled in, is to try and smooth over those waters so that they can work together and that the company can function.
Right. So you did kind of allude to conflict within organizations
Oh, yeah.
there, and I wanna jump in there. You're obviously when you hire for an organization, you're hiring people who have different beliefs and different understanding of things. So I mean, how do you handle conflict within organizations? What's your
Well,
strategy for handling conflict?
there's different ways of doing it. So, it depends. As an HR person, if I'm going into an organization at the very beginning, we don't have many staff, then what you do is you look for particular types of personalities, people who are going to get along together, depending on the culture you're wanting to create. So you try and nip the problem in the bud before you start. You also
Right.
need to come from the position that some conflict is healthy. You need diverse opinions. You need different ways of looking at problems so that you can actually find different and new innovative solutions. There aren't many organizations, or there are a few, where all you do is follow the processes and procedures. That tends to be more like a franchise model where, you have somebody who's flipping burgers and they have the burger on one side, cook it for a certain length of time on one side, flip it over, stick it on the bun, add the sauce of a certain amount, and everything is regimented. But not many organizations are like that. A lot of organizations are looking for, people who can be creative when it comes to problem solving and troubleshooting, especially at the more senior levels.
Yeah.
So, when some conflict is healthy, it's when it becomes toxic and starts creating a toxic work environment that really we need to be pulled in. And at that point, what you're looking for initially, it depends on the two individuals or, the people involved. It may be that you've got two peers who are having a conflict, in which case you look for the common ground and try and, get them to see that, this other person is a nice person. This other person is a nice person. Can we not find a way to work together if they need to on a particular project? If it's a manager and somebody who report in a direct report, then it becomes a bit more problematic and a bit more tricky. And then you're also looking for, what is the root cause? What is the problem that really is going on here? Is it a personality clash, or does one of them actually have a valid point, in which case it's a method of education? You go into educating the two sides.
Yeah. Okay. So just moving away from that a little bit, when you're obviously you go into these organizations, it's your job to set up what becomes the organizational culture, what becomes
Oh,
the
sometimes I inherit it.
yeah. So how when you go into an organization, say it's what's the difference though? Say you're going into a startup and basically
Mm-hmm.
you're starting off the organizational culture as against you're going into a big organization where they typically have their way of doing things and you're the one to maybe I don't know turn it around or kind of adapt the system to a different path. what's the difference in the way you kind of settle into those roles?
I think it depends. I mean, it depends on the maturity of the organization. So but I mean, that can also be a bad thing too. So you can have a very mature organization that has vision, mission, values, and strategy already worked out. They know where they're going. They know what they want to be when they grow up. They've already figured out a strategy, and then performance falls out from that. Where there can sometimes be a problem is where there's a disconnect between, the leaders at the top believe that the organization is embodying the mission, vision, values, and strategy, whereas the people who are in the front lines don't. There's a disconnect, in which case it's reconnecting those individuals to the vision, mission, strategy, and also making sure that senior leadership is aware that there is that disconnect. And those can be tough conversations. With a small organization, I mean, a startup, it's not often that you have HR from day one. Usually we're brought in when there's a problem. Maybe they've had people walking out. Maybe they're starting to have a lot more conflict in the organization. Maybe they realize that they're not compliant and they've had their knuckles rapped by either OHS or employment standards. So there's been, or maybe even a human rights case, in which case we're brought in. And it's usually at that point that, we start asking the questions about, okay, how is information communicated within the organization? And start thinking about different structures to be able to support the company. And that includes vision, mission, and strategy.
Right.
And values. Values are a recruitment, well, all of them are a recruitment tool or a performance measure. So, your vision is, I think the example I gave before was toothbrushes, and I'm going to use toothbrushes again. So your vision is to be an environmentally, to lessen the impact on the planet of our organization, or lessen reduce human footprint.
Right.
Okay. And you do that by making the most environmentally friendly, zero carbon neutral, cradle to cradle toothbrush that you can imagine. It's a wood toothbrush that's made from sustainable wood with certain sorts of bristles, and then the strategy is how that gets to market. And then the values within the organization are the behaviors that you're actually wanting people to exhibit in their day-to-day life.
Yeah.
So I would use those as a hiring tool, and then the strategy as a performance tool.
Right.
So, and then behavior, the values and how that shows up in the organization becomes a hiring tool. Does this person not only have the skills and attributes I'm looking for on their resume when I meet them and have a conversation with them? Are they displaying, that they adhere to our values, that they're automatically following those values that we have?
Right. So speaking of hiring, I think we should go there. When you receive a whole bunch of resumes, and you're combing through, what makes, obviously there's the qualifications and how they match up well with what you're advertising for, but what makes one candidate stand out to you more than the other? I feel like there's some subtle things that people miss out on when they prepare, I don't know, resumes, or with just the way they communicate or present their qualifications, that I think you could maybe shed some light on there.
It depends on the position again. So let's say I'm looking for, crikey, let me think. Your resume says where you've been and what you've done. The job description that we print, that we use to say this is the person we're looking for, it will have some behavioral stuff in there, and it will have qualifications. It's a wish list. We are telling you what we want.
Right.
If your resume matches that fairly closely, you will be selected. We are also looking for, if it's a senior position, or let's say you're looking for an office admin or a finance person, you're looking for detail oriented, I'm looking to make sure that the is spelt right. Is everything on it spelt correctly?
Right.
Yeah. Are there words missing? Does it make sense when I read it? So always get somebody else to proofread your resume. It's very difficult to write and then edit your own work, unless you've got a gap of, a little bit of time between the two. So, make sure that somebody else reads it and tells you if there's any discrepancies in there.
Right.
So if I'm in there and it's a senior member of staff and they've got a real glaring spelling mistake, I will spot it. And that, if it's between you and somebody else and the other person has no spelling mistakes, I will pick the one who doesn't make the spelling mistakes, especially if it's a key part of what they need to do.
Right.
They need to write reports, they need to write letters, they need to be able to communicate written communication effectively, they need to write SOPs. Those written skills are really important in those particular roles. If I'm looking for, though, let's say a production associate, it's an entry-level position, I know they're not going to have much experience. So again, I'm looking for, their best foot forward, but I may overlook spelling mistakes and grammar. That's something that I can work with. And then at the interview with that individual, I'm looking for is this person coachable? Can I work with this person?
Right.
Are they going to fit within the team? Because I'm already going to know the personalities they're going to be working with. And then again, that can get you selected.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. So the job description, just look at the job description. If I've actually had some resumes come across my desk, and we're looking for, let's say, a marketing manager.
Yeah.
And they say, my aim is to be an air hostess with WestJet.
Right.
Well, I'm neither WestJet, and we're not advertising for an air hostess, so I know you're not going to stay. Why would you put that on your resume?
Okay.
I'd like the corner office with 15 staff, and it's a production associate, or it's flipping burgers at a McDonald's. They're not going to select you. And you'd be amazed some of the stuff that people do on their resumes. You look at it and you go, why have you sent this in? They're just like sending them out. They're not doing it with any thought. They're not updating it for the roles. Now, it's difficult right now because, portals like Indeed, you have one resume that does everything.
Right.
Well, you really need to keep rewriting those resumes and changing it for the position.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you think is a better strategy for job seekers? Would you say, so a lot of people, I know a guy that basically went, I'm going to, as you kind of described it, I'm going to spam my resume to 1,000 companies. Yep. One has got to get back to me. Yep. That's the quantity approach. And there's also the one that you also briefly described there, where you actually take your time and tailor the resume. A lot of times, you're applying to these jobs, and quite often maybe you don't, especially if it's not a really specialized job, you're not getting anything back, and people are just like, why waste my 2 hours or 3 hours creating carry on.
What you're looking for is, well, there's three different things I want to say about this. The first one is, when you're applying to a vacancy, tailor your resume to the vacancy.
Okay.
That's one. If you are sending a speculative resume out to HR departments for, let's say 500 target customers, you target it to, well, I wouldn't do 500. I would probably do between 20 and 50. And what you do is you do a little bit of research into those companies, and then in your cover letter, you talk about how you're going to solve a particular problem they've got, why they should hire you. It's speculative.
Yeah.
You're going to get a fairly low hit rate on the second one, but that's okay. You only need one, remember. The third thing is developing your network, because by the time a job has been advertised, they've already exhausted all of the people they know. You want to be the person they know, so you're reducing the competition for that role. So your network, you go out and network like crazy. The word I'd like to use, I can't use on a podcast. So you go out there, you pound the pavement, you make contacts. Now, making contacts doesn't necessarily, initially when you start in your career, your contacts are going to be family, friends, and maybe university friends.
Yes.
That's going to be your network. Now, they may not be able to offer you the job directly, but they may know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. And that's the sort of connection you're looking for. It's not going for the big elephant, going to go and hit the big elephant because, that's the person you want. It's somebody who may know the big elephant, because then you get the whole herd. You're wanting people to open their network for you. And you can only do that by building connections, by building, friendships or business friendships within different companies. Over time, you actually get a very wide, diverse network.
Right.
So you will actually have, I think my LinkedIn is like 600 people. These aren't all close buddies, close friends. Some of them are people I've met maybe once or twice, but we really liked each other.
Yeah.
And so, I know that I can potentially reach out to those people and have a conversation with them. And it can help me in two ways. One is when I'm looking for work, I let them know. You know,
Okay.
this is the sort, and I let them know the sort of work I'm looking for. You know, if you
Right.
hear of anything, because 600 people hearing of anything might yield something, and it'll be before the job is advertised.
Right.
As soon as it's advertised, you've got a lot more competition. And then the second thing it does is it helps you build a mentorship network. So it's a group of people who are now your personal advisors.
Hmm.
They saw something in you, they see something that you can offer them, and it goes the other way too.
Right.
So let's say I have a particular thorny issue that I'm trying to resolve. I can look through my network and I can think, okay, I can speak to this, and this person. I can give them all a call or a message. One or two of them are probably going to respond, and then give me different ways of handling and looking at that situation, so I can craft my own solution.
Right.
It's something actually that Brian Scudamore did from 1-800-GOT JUNK, or it's purported he did. What he did was, if he was out networking, you know, the landscape of the chicken dinner. How many chicken dinners can you stand?
Yeah.
What he would do is, if he met somebody who had a particular skill that he liked, he would say, you know, do you mind mentoring me on that? And they would go, well, and they'd look all leery because they're thinking of the traditional mentoring model, which is you meet maybe once every 2 weeks and have a sit down chat and a coffee, and that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
What he'd say is, well, what I'm looking for is, I've noticed that you have a real strong skill in this particular area. If I have an issue around that, can I give you a call and, you know, and use the wisdom of your years, your wisdom, and, you know, seek your advice? People are usually open to that because it's a low commitment.
Yeah.
And people like feeling valued, and they like to be the expert.
Yeah.
So that's how he built up this massive network of people that he could call on, and he used that.
Fascinating. So yeah, you just gave a whole masterclass on how to network. Right?
Well, you know, networking events themselves, I mean, they haven't been as prevalent as they were before, you know, the pandemic. It seems to have gone more to Zoom, and it's a different technique you would use. But if you're at an event, let's say it's a conference you've been sent to by the company, or you're going to a conference, or you're going to a networking event just to see what it's like. Your mission, should you wish to accept it, is to find one cool person in the room that you resonate with.
Interesting.
And to have a conversation with them. You can talk about anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And, you know, there are different strategies for moving on to the next person if you've got a dud.
Right.
Because, you know, I'm not for everyone. Not everyone's for me. So, you know, you're speaking to somebody and the conversation's going nowhere, and you've got those awkward silences. So you just say, you know, I'm actually here to network. So, you know, I'd like to move on to another conversation. You know, I'm not being rude or anything. And then you move on.
Right.
And you're just looking for that one cool person.
So
that's all you're looking for.
So
and there's different rules about who you approach and how.
Yeah.
And when you arrive at a networking event, you know, the best way to handle it, especially if you're the noob, and how you actually get into speak to the movers and the shakers in that networking. There's different ways of doing it.
Right. So what you're saying to me sounds a bit like, I don't know, dating a little bit. But
yep.
Where I'm gonna where I'm gonna call you on that a little bit is you know, dating has changed, and now I don't know, these days if you walked up to a girl in a bar, it can go one of two ways.
Yeah, you might get slapped. Yeah.
You might get slapped, or you might get worse, you might get the police ringing you pretty soon.
Exactly. Yeah, because you're a creepy guy at the bar.
Yeah, because you're a creepy guy at the bar, because that's not the way we do things these days. We you know, you probably got on the old Tinders. And this is how in that world of like digital communications, how would you say networking has changed? Are you able to do, because I'm sure the way you described it, going to a physical networking event, you know, chatting up a person.
You know, because I'm HR, I get a lot of people reaching out to me through LinkedIn. Usually recruiters, because what they're wanting to do is access not just me, but my network. And so they're
Right.
wanting to be friends. So, I've got a choice whether I want to link with them or not. It depends what I'm looking for and whether I think they can help me. Usually what I look for is some kind of referral.
Hmm.
So yeah, it has changed. The digital landscape has turned everything upside down.
Right.
But yeah, network. You are looking to expand your network. And initially it will be through family and friends. It will be through university professors. It will be through teachers. These are all people who can potentially link you to somebody who can help you move forward. And
Right.
as your career progresses, you'll actually meet more people. And you'll meet new people. I mean, the film industry used to use Facebook a lot. They still do. They've got a lot of Facebook groups on there. So it's more through social as opposed to something like LinkedIn, which is more formal.
Yeah.
White collar workers and offices tend to use LinkedIn. Indeed portal for recruitment is very, very broad. If you're looking for, scientists and professionals, you would usually use LinkedIn, although some would also use Indeed. So
Right.
each one has a slightly different demographic and a slightly different way of being used. And that's how I would approach it. So if I'm looking for a particular type of hire into an organization and it's a senior level, I'll use LinkedIn Premium and I will go and headhunt.
Oh, interesting. So
I will go and look for that person.
how often does it happen though that, and I've heard people say for certain roles they got headhunted, like,
Yep.
a recruiter actually sent them a message requesting that, asking if they were interested in a certain position. I feel like that's boss levels. How do you get to that level where jobs are reaching out to you? Is there a way you make your LinkedIn look?
No, it's you've got to be honest and truthful on your profile. And what position are you looking for? What do you want to be when you grow up? Where are you heading? And
Right.
I mean, one thing that you could do is you could reach out to people who are in the position that you really want and ask them how they got there. Have an informational. Just say, I'm really wanting to progress my career. I really look up to you. I've been following you for a while, not in a creepy way. And what I'm wanting to do is find out how you actually got into the position that you're in right now. What path your career took, and then again, people like being experts. They like giving information, and usually they want to help you if they've got the time.
Right. Okay. So
Ask people who were in that juicy job how they got there. I'm curious. How did you get there, but how did you get there? Yeah. And look at what experience they have. Look at the job postings for positions like that and see, okay, what am I lacking? What am I missing?
Right.
Get strategic instead of just like drifting from job to job, which is what most people do. I mean, I've been guilty of that too.
Okay. So
did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
And where I think I'll go next is in terms of maybe sticking to the hiring phase of what you do there. Obviously, there's a movement towards diversity within workplaces now, right? And I'm curious how you approach that balance of creating diversity within the workplace while also ensuring that you're hiring, purely on merit and getting the best people for the job.
Well, what does merit mean? I mean, when you hire an individual, the resume shows you where they've been and what they've done. The interview shows you, to a certain degree, a snapshot of who they are. And what you're looking for is a blend of the two.
Right.
Diversity, my belief is we need diversity in an organization. We need people of different faiths. We need people of different colors. We need different people from different backgrounds. We need to represent the society that we live in. Certain positions are very particular as to the education that they require in order for you to be successful in the position. So, for example, the position you're in, you need an advanced education in electrochemistry. Chemistry with a focus, inorganic chemistry with a focus on electrochemistry. So, I can't take somebody who doesn't have that experience. But if it's a toss-up between you and another individual who has exactly the same resume, who am I going to pick? I'm going to pick the person who I believe is coachable and who will fit within the organization. And personally, I don't care the color of your skin or where you're from, whether you're Israeli or Palestinian. That's irrelevant. What I'm looking for is somebody who can join the community of the organization.
Yeah.
Because organizations, I'm a triple bottom line person: people, planet, and profit. Right. That's what I'm looking for when I'm, working with an organization. And the piece I focus mainly on is people, but I also keep an eye on planet and profit. How can we do this by reducing our footprint, and how do we do this and make a profit? Because that's what organizations look to do.
Right.
And take care of people at the same time. I believe we can have it all.
So there's a bit of a sort of a negative.
But again, it depends. Sorry, I cut you off again. It depends on the organization. If the organization is a very, very large organization, they may realize that they've skewed towards a particular type of person that they're hiring. It may be gender, it may be color of the skin, whatever. In which case, what they would do is they would go out and they would look to balance that by hiring a more diverse workforce and encouraging people from underrepresented communities to apply.
Yeah.
And that's an encouragement, and it's where you put the ads. So what you would do is I would reach out to different organizations and say, is there anybody from your organization who would be interested? So I mean, like associations. So it may be outside of the HR realm where you would usually see a job posting, because I'm actually wanting to attract a certain type of person because we're underrepresented without going for tokenism. We still need them to be able to do the job, because otherwise what we're doing is we're setting people up for failure. Right. And if somebody is a visible minority and they're brought into an organization and they don't have the qualifications or the experience to do the job, then they're going to fail, and they're going to be visible failing, and it's going to reinforce any beliefs that people have. So I don't want to do that. But what we can also do is put together apprenticeship programs. So we're bringing, a cohort in of people who are underrepresented, and we're going to give them the experience and maybe some of the training they need to be successful in this workforce. However, to do that is expensive, and it's usually very large organizations who can afford to do it. Startups just don't have the money to do it. Right. We need somebody who's ready to go. And BC, where we are, is made up of like 90% of small business.
Yeah.
They employ less than 50. Yeah. So it's harder for those organizations to be able to be, put together programs to bring people on. But diversity, I'm a believer in.
Right. So obviously, and maybe I'll give you an example of a form of like strategy where, say for example, where in my country, I'm from Nigeria.
You are the prince who keeps sending me those emails, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I'm that guy. I am not. But yeah, shout out to the Nigerian princess, I guess.
There's always a Nigerian prince, and there's always some money involved, and they picked me. Right. Yeah, right.
I don't. Anyways, so in my country, the sort of the process for getting into university is, we all take a certain exam, and each university sets a cutoff. Say you're trying to get into medical school, they set a cutoff based on what everybody has scored in that exam. But the problem is there's a general cutoff, and then there's a cutoff for underserved people. So people from regions that are poor, undereducated. So you might have a higher score in the general exam than a person that's coming from a poor background. But that person, because they're from that poor background, gets into medical school ahead of you.
Yep.
And I give you this example to kind of like maybe framed the fact that a lot of times there's a lot of people have a lot of bitterness towards the diversity hire. There's a certain point of view. There's a certain way people look at the diversity hire. There's a certain way that people who are diversity hires kind of look at themselves. A lot of them will have these kind of like feeling that they're not good enough to be in that position or something like that. I wonder how you would speak to that.
Well, I think I've sort of already answered it, because what I've talked about is making sure that you're not setting people up for failure. So you're looking for individuals who have the qualifications and the experience to be able to do the job. If you're looking to bring and then you're putting that job as wallpaper in areas where they're more likely to look. Yeah, rather than like a job on Indeed, you would place that ad somewhere else, because you're actively encouraging people from particular backgrounds.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not that they're not able to do the job because they have the qualifications. It's that you're actively encouraging people to apply for that particular position from a particular group. The other side of it is around if you're wanting to, and you're a large organization because you can afford to do it, is making sure that the support is there for that individual to be successful. If they don't have everything, I mean, a job description itself, when you see it, is a wish list. We don't expect everybody to have everything on it. I mean, you feel like you've hit the jackpot if they do. If they don't, then, and it may be, you put a job out there and you've got, let's say, 15 candidates, and the person who you thought was most qualified by looking at the resume, when you met them, they're just not a good fit for the organization. They're displaying some behaviors that would be toxic or problematic in the organization.
Right.
Interviews are usually checking to make sure that you haven't lied on your resume. That's part of the process, because people do. Duh. And then the other thing that you're looking for is behavior. It's more of a behavioral. How does this person behave?
Yeah.
Are they going to fit within our organization? Are they going to be able to do the job that we need them to do and work with our existing team? Right.
So on that, I think you just mentioned people do lie on their resume. And I wonder what your strategy is for fishing out people who have lied on their resume. How do you ever find out? How do you know?
It depends how critical it is. It really does depend how critical it is, and it depends the role that they're going for. If you are in a law firm and you are hiring a new lawyer, and that lawyer hasn't passed the bar, but says they have on their resume,
I don't know if you've seen Suits.
You would check it.
Have you seen Suits?
I have seen
the series.
Yeah, no, I've seen it. Yeah, but but he was found out. He was found out at interview, because there is a record of who's sat their bar exam. So you would check that.
Right.
You're going to find out who this person is. So certain information can be verified. That's what references are around.
Right. But how do you...
If I get somebody getting in touch with me and they can't provide me with a single reference.
Right.
I've got to ask myself why.
So
unless
how do you
they're
handle...
new to the country. But then you can still get in touch with people abroad.
Right. No, sorry I was interrupting here. How do you handle someone embellishing? Well, because that's the other side of that, where people don't outrightly lie, but they embellish their resume.
They embroider.
I don't know, say I've only seen this machine, and it suddenly turns into I'm an expert at this machine.
Well, that's why you would make sure you have subject matter experts who also interview them. So if you've got a technical role, I would do an initial pass. Is everything on the resume? Are they a good person? Do I think they're coachable? I would ask them. I would speak to my subject matter expert for a couple of specific questions that only somebody who's run that machine would know.
Yeah.
And that would the answer to, and that would help. And then if they were able to get through that, if they were really good, then the subject matter experts would also interview them, because they will ask the technical questions. So if you've got a technical role, you get technical people to do the questions. If you've got a marketing role, you would get somebody who is proficient in marketing to ask them questions, because they will be able to source out how much embroidery has happened on that resume.
Right. Okay. So obviously we're at this point now, and I feel like a lot of what like jobs really changed, especially during COVID, was
Mhm.
moved more towards this remote, almost remote first mindset where it's possible. Um, so, I mean, how do you see work and workplaces changing in the next few years?
You know, the hybrid remote argument is still raging. And, some organizations do need people on site. If you are a scientist and you need a lab to be able to conduct your experiments, you can't really do that in your kitchen.
Right.
I'm sure WorkSafe would have something to say about that, as would if you live in a strata, the strata. And if you didn't blow the place up, then I mean, there's going to be some questions asked. So some roles
Yeah.
you need people on site. If you're in manufacturing, if you are, a frontline worker in manufacturing, you need to be on site to be able to operate the equipment. If you are a marketing professional, then you probably need to be available, but not necessarily on site all the time. But there are advantages to having people on site and having people being able to meet around the water cooler.
Right.
What that does is that allows organizations and individuals and teams to be able to problem solve and use diverse problem solving skills. I'm going to give you an example, and it's outside of the realm of work. So in archaeology, archaeologists always believed that the elaborate hairstyles that were on the statues of women from ancient Rome were actually wigs that women wore. And it took a hairstylist to get interested in archaeology, to look at them and say, actually, no, I think you can do those. And she actually did them. And what she did was she actually, did the braids, and then she would stitch the hair. And there is evidence to support that what she was saying was a new way of looking at the problem.
Right.
So those ancient hairdos that are all braided and curled and coiled, they were actually stitched in place. There's another one as well, and it was a branch of mathematics, and I can't remember the name of the branch, and it was to do with planes, and not aircraft, but planes in a three-dimensional object. And there was two sisters. One of them is the keen mathematician, saying, you can't actually make these, you can't model these particular structures, easily. And her sister said, hold my beer. Well, actually, hold my yarn. And she crocheted one of the structures. Her sister said, there was no easy way of modeling it.
Yeah.
And suddenly that branch of mathematics suddenly became very interested in crochet. So you need these, you need those conversations around the water cooler. I mean, those are both extreme examples, but you need those conversations to be able to effectively problem solve. Doing those remotely makes it harder because you don't actually have those kinds of conversations as easily. They're not as readily available. They'll happen usually at the end of a meeting, but they're not as readily available. So there will be a place for having people on site. The question is how much time will there be on site? And what's the purpose of that? So I think as a society, we are figuring this out.
Right. So
some organizations, there's a company out of Toronto, actually, which I'm absolutely fascinated by, called Big Viking Games. They just sound amazing. The whole organization is remote. They went remote during the pandemic, and they've remained that. And they're able to hire talent from all over the world. So they're doing it. They're doing the whole thing remote. I've got another friend who is an accountant. She has an accountancy business. You're writing down Big Viking Games now, aren't you? There's going to be just right. Big Viking Games. They're going to be reaching out to me and saying, "What the hell have you done?" So there's another company, a friend of mine. She's an accountant. She does corporate accounting, and so she likes the mergers and acquisition side of things and the initial public offerings. But she also she's a full service agency, so she provides corporate accounting for all different sorts of organizations. And she has a team of workers, and all of them she no longer has an office. All of them are remote. So there are organizations that can do this. But I don't think it's for every organization. I know another organization just based downtown where they're a scientific organization, they're doing research, and they're having a hell of a time getting staff to go back after the pandemic, but they need people on site. And so that then becomes a tricky situation. It's how do you manage that, and how do you compel people to return to work? And now we're getting the cases going through the courts where, you know, an organization can compel staff to go to, you know, return to work. And if they don't, then they can potentially be faced with termination.
Right.
But, you know, that's an extreme measure to take. But it may get, you know, some organizations may get to that because they do need their staff on site.
Yeah. But the other thing that I think we all learned during COVID, people had time to engage in hobbies. They didn't have to commute, and they didn't have to do some of the stuff they would normally do.
Yep.
Like in the traditional sort of work day from before.
I think personally, my view is when you start with an organization, I think you need to be there more often, depending on the role. Like, you know, what I do, I'd need to be there. However, part of my role can be hybrid.
Right.
It can be research. You know, I can be working from home. I can be researching. I can be conducting investigations. I don't necessarily need to be on site all the time. But, you know, initially I would be there all the time. And, you know, new members of staff, people who are new to the workplace, they need to be on site because they need to start building those connections.
Yeah. So where I thought I might go with that question is just, you know, what that kind of departure from an office first idea has kind of created is one where, you know, people are less interested in and I wonder how that will affect those careers that are kind of site based. You know, everybody's interested. It seems like everybody's more interested in this digital nomad kind of lifestyle where they get to a lot of people now want that lifestyle where they're able to travel, they're able to, you know, work from anywhere.
I don't think everybody wants that. I mean, I remember during the pandemic, some people were tearing their hair out because they were stuck home all day. The extroverts of the world want to be out there. They want to be mixing with people. You know, that's where they get their, you know, that's where they get their energy from, is from those human interactions. So, you know, I understand what you're saying. I think that's unique to particular roles. Right. I think there will always be a blend of both. And I think, you know, we're deciding what that needs to look like and what we personally want to do. I like going to the office. I like going and seeing people. I like having those conversations that you have and building relationships. But I also like working from home too. I mean, oddly enough, I am actually an introvert. Yeah, people. Oh. From the HR person, it's not a good sign. Oops, slipped up there. I do like, you know, I like going into the office, but I also like working from home too. When I'm at home, I know I can get more done, and the commute is fabulous. It's 17 steps from my bedroom. Yeah. Driving an hour out to some godforsaken place is not, you know, just one way is not my idea of fun. Having said that, it does have a place. I do like going into the office. I do like mixing with people. I do like, you know, the ideas that come from that and, you know, how it helps my job. You know, if you've got a relationship with somebody, it's a lot easier for you to have those tough conversations with people.
Yeah.
And, you know, we do have tough conversations sometimes.
See, speaking of tough conversations, one of the conversations you'll have to have with quite a few people is one where I you kind of mentioned it there, where, you know, sometimes you have to lay off people, and I wonder, especially now where a lot of that, especially in big tech, you see that there's a lot of layoffs happening because companies are trying to downsize, trying to right size, because some people might have overhired, and some people might just be suffering because of the inflation at the moment. Mm-hmm. What is the approach from HR in terms of determining when you're downsizing, who stays and who goes? And, you know, what's the approach there really?
You know, it's not always an HR decision. We don't always make the decision. We're sometimes the ones who carry it out in collaboration with whichever, you know, the management team. There's a difference between a layoff and a termination. A layoff, there is an intention to bring you back.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
A termination means it's the end of the employment, but it's usually phrased as a layoff because that's kinder. But the employment relationship is being terminated. It's not that you're being terminated, it's the position is being eliminated or terminated. Choosing somebody, what you would do is, I mean, every HR department that I know of, what we do is we actually have a list of key personnel, and it changes. So who are the people that we absolutely cannot lose? And then how do we build capacity to protect the organization from having too many of those people? If we're looking to downsize or lay off, what we would do is there'd be a series of conversations at senior level and at management level to evaluate which people are the most valuable to the organization. It's down to value. You always need to be providing value. If you are not providing value, you are vulnerable. So what does value look like to that organization at that time? Because it changes. Right. And that's who would be laid off. The people who are less valuable. It's not that you're not valuable. It's that you're not as valuable as, you know, somebody down in the office next to you or somebody in a different position to you.
Right. So on the other side of that,
it also depends on union, because unions will also have, if there's a collective agreement, there'll be something in the collective agreement about how you actually do layoffs and how you pick people. And it might be last in, first out. Might not be. I mean, there's a comedian called Zoltan who I absolutely adore. I think he's hilarious. And he was saying he was very young in his career, very new in his career, and his friend got him a job working at this place. And it was some sort of manual labor. And Zoltan was absolutely terrible at this job, absolutely awful. And it was coming up to layoffs, and they knew there was going to be layoffs. And he's thinking, oh man, it's going to be me. Anyway, they were all called into the office, and he didn't get laid off, but his friend did. And his friend was good at the job. And, you know, that sucked. And he said, well, why, you know, his friend said, well, why are you laying this guy up? Why aren't you laying Zoltan off? Oh, we can't get rid of him. He's hilarious. So Zoltan was able to remain employed. I don't know how true the story is, but it sounds plausible.
It carries on,
his personality and what he does now. He was important because he affected the morale of the whole organization. He was funny, and they needed that in the organization, especially at a time of layoffs, and it protected him. So that was the value he brought, and now he's making scads of money, I hope, as you know, as a comedian.
Interesting.
Yeah. He got known as the cat guy during the pandemic because he told a joke about Penelope the cat, and then he had scores of women of a certain age who were all cats turning up to his demographic changed at his shows, and they were all showing pictures of their cats, which he just found a little bit too much.
Is this guy on TikTok, or where is this guy?
I don't know where I've seen him, but yeah he's. I watch a lot of comedians because I find them funny, and I need something to, you know, deal with what I deal with every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
value.
Value. So the other side of that is promotions, right?
Yep.
And how would you so a person, how would you say people should strategize going about seeking a promotion?
Is it promotion or more money that you're talking about?
I mean, I would hope that a promotion means more money.
All right. So, well, they're different things. It may be that you believe that you are undercompensated for the role that you do. It may be that your job has shifted and you've acquired new skills that are valuable to the organization, and you don't feel you're being fairly compensated for that. Or it may be that there's a job coming up that you know of that you really want, that you're really interested in.
Right.
So prepare. All right. First thing you would do is, if you know this job is coming up, this promotion, go and speak to, you know, who your line manager is or who's responsible for that, and said, I'm really interested in this position. What do I need to be successful?
Right.
You're not saying give a job, you know, give it to me, I'm the best person. What you're saying is, what do I need to be successful? So they will give you a pointer, and it means that it may not be that you get that promotion, but you're already on their radar, and they know that you are working towards what they've asked you to do.
Right.
That's one. The other one is asking for more money because you've actually done your skills have actually increased, and now you believe you're more valuable. In which case, you would go and speak to your boss, line manager, and say, the salary that I'm at, do some research. Google is your friend. Go out there, find comparable positions, and say, I've done some research. I believe that I'm undercompensated. The salary that I'm interested in being able to achieve is X. Can you help me work out a way to get there? How would we get there? It doesn't mean that I'm demanding that money now and holding a gun to your head. It means that over a period of time, maybe with a series of pay increases or incremental changes, the organization can get there.
Right. So
it allows grace on both sides. You get what you want, they get what they want.
There's a popular belief, especially with people that are younger in the workforce, that companies would rather hire a new person and pay that person more than they would sooner promote someone that's already within the organization who feels that they're worthy of a higher position and more pay. Is that a thing, or is it just a perception?
I think it's partly perception. I would speak to, if there's a position in your organization that you're interested in, unless of course, let's say you're a production associate on the front lines and you believe you need to be the CEO, because I'm not going to listen to you. We're not going to listen to you. But that's where
why not? If you think it, you can be it.
That's where your research will come in. You would speak to CEO. Sorry, you can see the cat behind me. You would speak to the CEO, different CEOs or different people in positions that you want to be in, and find out how they got there. What were the positions that they were in to get into their positions? And you'll find that there's a commonality. They did this job first, then they did this job, then this job, then this job.
Yeah.
So what you would do is you would speak to, your whoever is responsible for hiring that person and say, I'm really interested in advancing my career. This is a position that I would really be interested in doing. What do I need to do? So you've already got your research. You're armed with your research as to what your career path really sort of needs to be based on the conversations you've had. You're now speaking to people who are decision makers around that particular position and saying that you're interested. And can we put together, speak to your HR, can we put together a career plan to get me there? It's harder in smaller organizations, but that's why you would actually have a graded system as opposed to, you've only got certain positions.
Right. So, and obviously a lot of times when inevitably your timeline doesn't match the company's timeline, or your valuation of yourself doesn't match the company's valuation, there's a lot of, with that in mind, a lot of people in this generation believe that job hopping is the easiest and the best way for them to get to their financial and career goals. How do you assess that?
Depends. Really does depend. What do you want to be when you grow up? But you know what? Your generation, you say it's as though it's unique to your generation. It's not. I'm Gen X. We were exactly the same.
Right.
We wanted to change the world. Millennials wanted to change the world. Gen Z now wants to change the world. You want the corner office with millions of staff. You believe, you've had the whole education system telling you that you're fabulous, and that
but I am.
And your parents telling you can do anything, and you can. So each generation is, I swear, it is exactly the same. There is very little difference. I mean, everybody says, "Oh, the Gen Z, they want to be running the companies." So what? I was no different. I remember those feelings. I'm older now, but I remember it. So, I'm no different. And I know that, that youthful exuberance and enthusiasm, I think it's fabulous and organizations need it, and it is very valuable. However, if somebody is saying to you who's, been in the place of work for, let's say, 10 years, maybe a bit more jaded, because it does that, and is saying to you, I think you might be better, waiting just a year or two before you move into that position. They're usually coming from a position of knowledge, and they're saying that for a reason.
Yeah.
I like watching The Crown, and there's a scene in The Crown, the series about the Queen.
Right. No,
Yeah.
I know The Crown. I
Yeah,
haven't
it's
watched
like
it,
the
but I
costumes.
know the show.
I like the costumes. Anyway, there's a scene in it where the Queen's father, George the, he is approached by Anthony Eden about getting Winston Churchill out of office. And what the king says is, you know, it's better to wait and be prepared for office rather than take a position you're not prepared for. And I should
Right.
know, because he ascended the throne. It was never expected he would, because of what happened with his brother David.
Right.
So, you know, there's usually a reason. And so if you ask the reason why, people are usually saying something for a reason. And you've got to dig a little bit to find out. So, you know, you think I'm not ready for this position. Can you give me the reasons, you know, what are the reasons around that? Just so that I know where I need to focus my efforts. And then what you'll get is well, what I really need to see from you is X, Y, Z. This is the experience that I think you need at this time. Yeah. Now, it's one person's opinion, and you may agree with them or you may not agree with them. If you don't agree with them, then you've got a decision to make. Do you stay with this organization or not? When you go into a new organization, you're walking into a new environment. If you're working alongside really good people, it's a fabulous team. They're supporting you. They're giving you direction. You're getting, you're getting regular, input into how you can improve, and also praise. And you like the people you work with, and you're fairly compensated, or mostly fairly compensated, then that is a lot to give up to go into a brand new organization that you know very little about. Yeah. Maybe that's the lesson to learn, is you jump into a new organization and it turns out to be a nest of vipers where everybody's stabbing everybody in the back. And right. I'm older, I've worked in environments like that, and they're detrimental to your mental health. They're not pleasant places to work. And right. Believe me, you don't want to jump out the frying pan into the fire. So if you are going to jump up, if you are going to move positions, make sure that what you're going into is better than what you've left. Right. That, those people are, that the culture of the organization is amenable to you joining them. And, questions to ask. Why did the previous, is this a newly created position? No. So why did the previous person leave? What's the reason for the previous person leaving? Right. And then reach out to your network and see if you know anybody who works there. Or somebody who knows somebody who works there, because then you can find out what the place is like to work at. What's it like working there? What's the management structure like? How are decisions made?
Right. So how when you, or maybe I should ask this question first, and then I'll go back to the job hopping bit. So is the pay gap between men and women a myth, or is it a real thing?
It's real.
Okay.
It's real.
I expected you'd say that.
Yeah. Well, I mean.
So this is one of my questions off the internet, by the way. Why do you think that pay gap exists?
Well, I come from the HR side. I found that, and this is a broad generalization, very broad. So men will typically apply for jobs that they're not totally qualified for, and they will also go in and ask for a promotion and for more money. Women will apply for jobs that they know they are definitely qualified for. We tend to be more cautious. We also we believe that we will be rewarded rather than going and asking for it. That's what I've seen.
Interesting.
And when women are negotiating, they typically ask for less money than men do. Men will ask for the stars and be happy when they get the moon. Well, they'll grumble, but they'll, when they get the
Okay.
I've actually learned a lot being on this side of it, just seeing how, how women will do that. Now, that's a broad generalization. That's not every woman.
Yeah.
I have come across some amazing women who they ask for what they're worth, what they believe they're worth, and they're quite happy to say no. And they apply for a job that is a stretch. Women don't always apply for a job that is a stretch, but some women do.
Right. Yeah. So the other thing is, in terms of like the future of work, there's obviously been this movement towards like a lot of digital careers now. You
Yeah.
know, more and more kids are choosing to be, I don't know, YouTubers
Yeah.
or Instagram influencers or basically digital careers, right?
Hmm.
And I wonder what you've seen in terms of the skill level of the people that are coming into, because one of the things with these digital careers, and especially the social media geared ones,
Hmm.
is the fact that a lot more kids are interested in them because they seem easy and they seem like, you know, they look easy. They look like it's like you could easily make $1 million in like a year or something,
Hmm.
and your life is set. I wonder how you see the impact of that on like the workplace going forward.
Well, when you're hiring for a position, you're looking for a particular education and a particular skill set, and then a particular type of person. Those are the things you're looking for. Um, and I mean, I'm not sure how the digital economy impacts employment. There's a lot of
Right.
people out of work. There's a lot of employers looking for people.
Yeah.
And employers are always saying, we can't get enough people. Well, they can get people, I think there's a bit of a mismatch between the two right now in terms of expectations, what work is, what work feels like. I mean, when somebody joins an organization from school, from high school,
Yeah.
the first, year or so is usually them figuring out how the world of work works. What's it like being, showing up every day to an employer? How do you deal with, the parts of your job that you don't like? Because we all have that.
Yeah.
There's always a part of your job that is the bit that's not your favorite. And
Right.
it varies from person to person.
Mm.
So how do you deal with that? And I see this also with new graduates from university. When they leave, they're top of the heap. They're in their final year. They've been told by everybody that they can change the world, and then they start an organization, and it's like starting from scratch again because they're not top of the heap anymore. They've got people who've got 10, 20, 30 years worth of experience who are more senior to them.
Yeah.
And so some people have more of a challenge adapting than others.
Right.
And it takes a while for them to actually embed into what work feels like and what work actually is.
Right. Okay. As we, I think I'll make this my last question, and thank you so much for
How long have we been going for now?
We've been going for almost an hour, 30 minutes.
An hour and a half. I thought it was a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. So my final question for you is just going to be, if you were giving advice or mentoring a person who's starting a career from the beginning,
yeah,
I wonder what you would tell them is the most important element in terms of building a successful career.
I have notes. 1, network. You want to expand your network as much as possible. You are looking for anybody. Initially it'll be friends and family and parents and friends, family, friends, network. Let everybody know what it is you're looking for. That's the first one. Expand your network. And when you're out there in the world of work, you're looking to collect cool and interesting people. The cool and interesting people can provide you work in the future.
Right.
Okay? First one, add value. Always add value to the organization that you are in. If you are not adding value, you are vulnerable. So what does value look like to that organization? Because it changes. And what is your particular value? Remember Zoltan. He got people laughing. He impacted the culture of the organizations that people enjoyed going to work. That was the value he added. So it's not always what you think.
Right.
You will be laid off at some point. It's a fact of life. Prepare for it. Save up as much as you can as a financial cushion to help you through that.
Right.
Also, work out what you would do when, if it ever happens. So you hope for the best, but plan for the worst. All right, 9 a.m., the day after you've been laid off, you had an evening going around kicking baseboards, getting angry. Now, what are you going to do that first day? What's your plan of action? How are you going to go out and find more work? What are you going to do? Leave with grace. If you are leaving an organization, always leave with grace.
Interesting.
I mean, we can all be nasty. We can all be, you're going to get cheesed off. You're going to get angry. You're going to go around kicking baseboards. Don't take that against the people who've laid you off or the company that's laid you off. Keep that to yourself. If you can't say anything nice, you keep your mouth shut until you can speak to people nicely.
Right.
Because again, those contacts can be contacts for the future. There's going to be people at that organization who are going to look to see how you behave.
Interesting.
And if you leave with grace, it's not that you're a pushover or a patsy, it's that you're a good human being. And you never know. You never know where the next opportunity is coming from. And you can maintain those connections. I've done that a couple of times because I have been laid off. And I've laid people off too.
Right.
Get a mentor. And a mentor isn't necessarily somebody that you meet every week for coffee or once a month for coffee. What it is an individual who can provide you advice in a specialist area when you need it. And you remember Brian Scudamore, what he did with 1-800-GOT-JUNK when he met somebody who had a useful skill or something that he admired, a skill he didn't have, he would ask them, do you mind mentoring me on that? And what that looks like is, if I have an issue in that area, would you mind, can I give you a call and talk about it? Can I reach out to you? Can I email you? Can I Zoom you? However you want to do it.
Right.
So those are the pieces of advice I'd give.
Right.
So somebody starting out. And I think that's it. Those are my notes, yes.
Wow. You know what? I just wanted to, I feel like you guys at home won't realize this, but this is the second time we've done this interview. And I thought I
didn't know if you were going to admit to that or not.
And full disclosure, and you won't realize this, but I've tried to kind of make this interview different to you the first time I messed it up. And there's a good story to that. We did a whole long 1 hour, 30-minute interview with Julia, literally just like giving me dimes and dimes. And I found out an hour, 30 minutes later when I was stopping the interview that I never recorded a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And a testament to the kind of person she is, and the kind of person she is to me, is the fact that she let me do this interview again and made it even better the second time, which is wild. I'm tempted.
I think some of the stuff's going to get me into trouble. I'm going to get blamed for some of that, and some of the stats people are going to correct me. But go for it. Fill your boots. Go for it. Educate me. I don't mind.
Yeah.
Anybody can reach out to me, by the way. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can give my email address as well. I'm more than happy to speak to people.
Okay. Do you wanna share a contact or share something that you're...
Find me through LinkedIn. It's Julia Eden in Vancouver.
Okay, there you go. And where I'll finish this is, obviously Julia is a smart woman. She's smart not just because of everything she said today, but because she hired me at some point in my career.
I did, yeah. You were lovely, and your hands didn't fit the glove box, and that was a huge lesson for us. We actually had to change our hiring practices and get people to put their hands in the glove box before when they came around for interviews at Co-op.
Yeah. So
that was a big lesson.
That's a different story that I'm not going to tell you guys today.
I know, that's hilarious. Yeah, you've got unusually large hands.
Oh my God. I'm never leaving that down now.
I thought it was lovely. It was like, we've never had that before.
Anyways, thank you so much for giving me your time generously today, and thank you guys at home for listening. And I hope you've gained some value from this conversation.
All right.
So please leave us a comment. Reach out to Julia. Thank you very much for listening. See ya.
Take care. Bye. Lovely speaking to you again.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Wolf of Young Street podcast. If you derive value from this podcast, please don't forget to subscribe. I would love to hear from you as well. So please comment your thoughts down below.